you hit this huge milestone that was supposed to make everything easier. You hired managers to oversee people or departments in your team. Now, this is supposed to free you up big time so that you don't have to worry about all the little details. You don't have to give all the feedback. Don't have to have all the performance conversations. Don't have to set the expectations. This is freedom as a leader, especially if you're running a business. You got so many other things to think about. And then you look at your managers and you think, well, why am I still being pulled in the weeds? Why are they asking me to make all the decisions? Why are people still coming to me for these different situations, whatever they are? And when that happens, my friends, that is when we have not fully deputized our managers to really own that responsibility. And if you are still being pulled in, it might be a signal that your managers don't really know that they're supposed to be doing that. It might mean that you're subtly hinting that you want to be in the weeds because you're still asserting yourself into the conversation. Okay, this is real talk. So if that's the case, no judgment, but sometimes that's what's happening there. Or your managers actually don't know how to be managers. And fortunately, you got the queen of manager development right here. I love working with managers. And so when that is the challenge, well, this is where you have so much opportunity, because you may have folks that are really, really seasoned, but they've never actually gotten the foundation of learning what it even means to be a manager and what the basics of doing that are. And I'm telling you, folks can have been managing teams in many environments for many, many years and never actually got that foundation, because about 77% of managers never got any training at all. So it's actually pretty likely that the people that are managing folks on your team haven't had any training, most likely, right? So you get to this point where you're able to up-level yourself. You're able to scale yourself. And the fact that you can't do that, we got to fix this. This is heartbreaking. Now, let's start with the part where you play a role in it. Because with everything with our teams, the first question we want to ask ourselves is, okay, where am I reinforcing this? Where am I playing into this? Where am I getting in the way? This is not a blame game. This is a question that liberates you from having to be in the middle. So when you think about, okay, where am I getting in the way? It might be that, I don't know, you are very particular about how certain things are done. And your managers know that even when they make a call, you're like, well, I kind of would have done this. So this is our first moment as a leader to make a shift. And one of the most powerful tools we can give folks is context. So not just telling your leaders, okay, I trust you, make the decision, and then they make a decision, you're like, oh, it's not right, right? And then you're kind of stuck. Should I change it? I don't want this. No, let's not even go there. Impart on your managers how you make decisions, department by department. What are the things that are easy calls? What are tough calls? What's the criteria that you think through when you're making a decision? What are the non-negotiables? Who are you consulting with? Open the hood, let them into the whatever. Let them understand your thought process when making a decision. The more insight you can give into how you make decisions, how you would have made the decision that they came to you with that you want them to be making. Talk them through it. Maybe do that 3, 4, 5 times. Start to get them comfortable with the way that you're making decisions, especially if it's the way that you want them to be making decisions. This is absolutely game-changing because it literally doesn't take any time. If your team member who's managing folks, your department leader, whatever, comes to you and says, hey, can you make this call on this thing? And you say, yes, this is the kind of thing that I want you to be taking on. But for the next 3 times this comes up, or your next 3 questions, let me narrate and walk you through how I'm making that decision. Okay, I considered this. Does it have an impact on the client? Is it going to change the price of our service or product? Is it going to, and you walk through that checklist. That's the checklist you're already going to walk through because you're making the decision this time. And then you are teaching them how to make that on their own. You're teaching them how to fish. This is good stuff. That's how we start to at least solve for that person doesn't really, that you're kind of getting in the weeds even when you say you don't want to be, or you're making the decisions, or you're kind of the de facto decision maker because nobody really knows how to get it right with you. Okay. And if people are saying, well, I don't want to get it wrong, that's both a confidence thing, and it's also you showing them, well, what does it mean to get it right? Here's how I think through it. And when you do it in that way, it will be right. Now, the confidence piece is resolved by when they get it right, you saying, yes, great job. Or when they have a great idea saying, oh, I love that. Like, let's bring more of that. You're reinforcing and recognizing and celebrating that. You're having a party when they make a good decision, but you're saying, oh, that was awesome. Like, I love how you made that call. Like, let's do more of that, right? So you're reinforcing that's going to build confidence, and that's going to solve that issue over there. So let's say the issue is that, your managers, they don't really want to take responsibility. They feel overloaded and they don't really want to be managers. They don't want to deal with that stuff, but they're like, I want the responsibility, but I actually don't want to take that on. That's not my problem. You want to lead a division, and part of that is managing and overseeing people, then that is the job description of it. So I hear a lot like, oh, I want this person to take this on, but they don't want to deal with all the personnel stuff. They don't want to be a leader. They don't want to manage people. It's like, if that's what you need for the job, that's what you need for the job. A lot of times people think it takes all this extra time to manage people. That's a fallacy that is not really accurate unless you don't know how to do the job, which is one example of doing it is what I was just recommending, of like narrating, explaining it in context, sort of building the teaching into actual conversations you're already having. If your leaders don't want to be leaders, and right now only 3 in 10 people say they want to be managers, so again, pretty likely they're like dragging their feet about it, then this is a moment to get that person some training, get that person upskilled, and reinforce this is the job to be a leader of this division. It involves managing people. So now it's about just resetting expectations. If they are super, super, super skilled, but they're just not, you feel like they're not equipped to be a manager, I think that you kind of got to figure out what is your structure here. How are you holding people to the same standard? I don't know. Come to me, hello@leagarmor.com, if you want to talk through the nuance of your team. I know there's situations where it makes sense. Sometimes I've seen dynamics where a creative director doesn't want to manage the designers. So maybe they have an art director who's a little bit more and they're managing everyone, but it's still in that line of business. Okay, I've seen that work before. Or a creative director and the executive producer is actually overseeing everyone. I think that's a bit trickier because the executive producer is potentially not of that creative domain. So the mentorship wouldn't be there, but you can do indirect managing through the creative director can still provide that guidance. But I think when people think managing is just like, I just don't want to improve the timesheets and answer the vacation requests, that is literally not what managing is. Not at all. Managing is about setting a direction, empowering people, helping cultivate their skills and superpowers and strengths and see, oh, this is possible for me. Like, it's all this other stuff that is done through conversation and observing someone's work and giving feedback and having one-on-ones. That's really what the job is about. So if someone doesn't want to do that, I question, how are they setting a vision for their department and its growth if they don't want to deal with the people in it? That would be a concern for me. Just calling it out. All right. Last part, if your managers want to do it, but they don't have the skills, they're like, oh, I didn't know I'm supposed to have one-on-ones. I didn't know I was supposed to give feedback. This is what I see the most often. I think, even though I said 3 in 10 people want to be managers, for the ones that are in it, their challenge is they actually don't know how, because we haven't trained our managers. And a lot of times folks grow in your company and they become a leader. Again, we said, and there wasn't the time or this moment of oh, wait, we should actually take a step back and make sure you have these foundations. That right there is when we have to train our people. And my book, The New Manager Playbook, I wrote it because of this challenge, because when I became a manager, I was managing a former peer. It was a freaking disaster. I didn't know anything that I was supposed to be doing. He was a really low performer, so I had to be giving feedback and dealing with all these issues he had to start on the team. And I'm like, why is there nothing out there? And I worked in a freaking Fortune 100 company where they should have a lot of resources, right? So it's pretty likely that you don't have a whole set of manager resources, and you're maybe, looking at, should I give them a book or a coach or a resource, like whatever it is. I would give your managers a couple different things. Yeah, start them with the New Manager Playbook. Highly recommend, but have them listen to podcasts like this so that they're starting to work through issues. And then I really think having some kind of training where they can think through scenarios, they get the foundations, they get to practice, they get to sort of get that solid baseline is going to be very, very helpful, because your managers are learning on the job at the expense of their team members. So the longer it takes them to figure it out, the more kind of messy it can get. It doesn't have to be. So I do think having some kind of training, digital, in person, whatever it looks like, whatever you have budget for, is very, very valuable. Even if it is a conversation that the two of you have about, what does it mean to be a manager in this team? What are the expectations? What are you wanting to hold them accountable to? They're starting to reset into that. And then they also can ask, okay, well, this is the part that feels trickier to me. Maybe actually I would ask you to invite that out of them. So say what's feeling comfortable, what feels harder, so that you have an understanding of where they might need some acute support. Spoiler, the things that are harder, because it's always the case, giving feedback, always really hard for folks. It's hard for me. It's hard for you, right? Of course it's hard for your managers. Delegating, always very hard. I don't want to overload someone. I don't know what to offload on myself. It takes too long to delegate. We've all heard it. We've all said it. Delegating is another skill that folks need to build to be a good manager. Feedback, delegating, setting expectations. This is talking about what we're doing here, setting things up with clarity, talking about when we need to check in, what success looks like. That's a core skill, but I think that one is an easier one to pick up. The hardest one, holding people accountable. It's harder than feedback, and it's harder than delegating. Holding people accountable is, what conversation do you have after a deadline's missed, after something doesn't happen? What's the follow-up? So it's like feedback, but not always in the best situations. But it creates the best situations, because that's what creates all of the good things that happen after. So those three things are what you really want to make sure your managers understand and can do effectively. Feedback, delegating, and holding people accountable brings back the feedback and expectation setting. So maybe it's just two things, right? Manageable. But people don't just figure that out in their uncomfortable situations, which we might be avoiding. If we're avoiding feedback and we're avoiding delegating, we might be taking a lot more on. So you're saying, why are my managers so overloaded? And they're pulling me in for that reason. Why are my managers why are their team, they don't know what's going on with their team members. Why are their team members not performing well? Why do I have to be dealing with this? All of that is because your managers aren't actually doing the responsibility of managing. So you hired people to be managers. Great. That's a huge win. Now you can scale yourself. Before you leap out of that role, you have to get those folks grounded in what it means to be a manager, where you're going to be plugged in, where you're not, what you want them to come to you for, what you don't, and then give them the tools to lead effectively. And I'm telling you, when you give them those tools, that's when the shift is made. It's not by changing their titles. It's not by changing your org chart. It is by imparting those skills on them so they can lead confidently. Because without that, you will be sucked in every day, even if you don't have the manager skills yourself. And you're like, I'm not good at this. Why are you asking me? Because they look to the person that's running the ship, right? So we've got to give them those tools. Books, New Manager Playbook. If folks want to read a book, the podcast, this formerly known as the New Manager Playbook podcast, 200 plus episodes on fundamental skills of how to be a manager, free resource. Or training, live training, digital, whatever you need. Your managers need something. I've got the tools. Email me at hello@leagueover.com if you want some support out of my library. Or If you have resources inside of your own company, plug into those. Please invite your team members to take those courses, take those trainings, and make the space. Give them an opportunity, because when they get upskilled, they will start to take that pressure off you. I promise. See you next time.